Hey guys, welcome to this week's version of Office Hours with me, Kyle Bowling. Give me a couple minutes to continue getting set up here. If you don't mind, start chiming in. Let me know where you're watching in from, and then you can start with the questions anytime too about the current running injuries that you're experiencing. Kind of like a few weeks ago with our last show. Please get as detailed as possible with me. Let me know, say we're talking about knee pain. Let me know what part of the knee hurts, above it, below it, on the inside, on the outside, and then a few details about when it started and what it's doing during the run. Is it stopping you in your tracks? Does it warm up after a while? Does it only hurt afterwards? So details like that will help me get as specific as possible with you. All right. All right, so we got some people chiming in from the live chat. Hey, Andrew. Hello, Kandarp. And so we'll get started in just a minute here. Like I said, please start chiming in with questions. And we got Renee from Houston. We're thinking about you guys down in Houston. I hope you guys are staying safe, staying dry. And like I said, let me know any questions that you have. Holly from Lockport, New York. Hello, Holly. Hope you're doing well. All right, so more people chiming in. Hello, Jay from Providence and Running Geek Girl from Arkansas. Thanks for joining us. Ben from Scotland, that's awesome. And Renee, so before we get a little bit more in depth, I see you already given me some questions on pain, specifically forefoot pain. Let me know some more specifics about when it hurts, what part of the foot hurts. I know you said forefoot, but is it on the inside, on the outside? Is it the first metatarsal, fifth metatarsal? And then, a few more details about when it got started. So before we go into answering questions, I've been doing a lot of gait analysis with you guys lately, and it's something that we're really excited to be offering through the run experience. So it's a special type of appointment, and if you're interested in scheduling this appointment, I put the directions on the description in the description section underneath this video on YouTube. So that's how you schedule. But it's basically we see a big time correlation between the specific ache and pain that you're having and various movement patterns. One example would be if you're having IT band pain. So it's a very common ache or pain that we get kind of on the outside of the knee while we're running. A lot of times it's more severe running downhill or walking downstairs post-run. That's something that it's a classic example of, just because that's where the pain is on the outside of the knee, that's not necessarily where the dysfunction is. And so with gait analysis, like I was mentioning, a lot of times if we're looking at different angles of you running, slow it down into super duper slow motion, and we're looking at movement patterns, we'll see some hip instability or some hip or leg rotation that then will cause that IT band to wear out, overwork itself, and develop those symptoms. So, the last thing we want to do from a corrective standpoint is, just kind of chase pain, where we say, all right, the outside of your knee hurts. That's the one area we're going to treat. That's a lot of times the tip of the iceberg. So allowing us to look at the movement patterns helps us, A, get your pain better, B, figure out the underlying cause and prevent it from coming back. So what I was alluding to initially is the appointments we're offering is gait analysis, where you sign up for an appointment and then record yourself running from a couple different angles. And this could be you running outside, it could be running on the treadmill, it could be running anywhere. And you can make these videos with just a basic iPhone or Android camera. You then send them over to me, and then we get on a Skype or FaceTime call, and we do some gait analysis. I plug the videos into a program that I use, measure joint angles, see what's happening from a movement standpoint, and then that allows us to get some good work done. And I can then send you some specific exercises to do that fit what you have going on. So we're very excited to be offering these appointments. And I do these with the Run Experience. I'm also a sports chiropractor by trade, and I have a private practice here in Louisville, Kentucky, and I specialize in working with runners. And I've yet to do one of these gait analysis studies. I've done hundreds at this point. I've yet to do one that doesn't show a correlation between that current ache or pain or previous injury with a movement pattern dysfunction that we see on video. So it's a real helpful way of figuring out what's going on from a movement standpoint. All right, so enough about me. Let's get to you guys. So starting from the top here, I'm going to be looking on the comment section, and I'm going to chime in with as many as I can. If I don't get to you in the 45 minutes, I'm very sorry. Feel free though to email me at kyle@therunexperience.com, and hopefully I can get to your question and give you some recommendations. So feel free to reach out to me anytime as well. All right, so on to your questions. All right, so we're going to start with Andrew M. It says, hi there. I've had some shin splints pain on the right inside leg. Are support shoes the way to go, or stick with cushion shoes and work on strengthening exercises? So what you're referring to is a posterior shin splint, from what it sounds like, or medial tibial stress syndrome is kind of the medical term for it. It's pain along the posterior tibialis muscle, which is basically, you have your tibia, which is the shin bone. Right on the inside, kind of back edge of that shin bone is the posterior tibialis muscle, and that's the one that usually starts to hurt when you get one of these types of shin splints. So the two most common underlying causes, one would be if there's instability of your foot, where that ankle is collapsing inward, which then pulls and puts more stress on that inside of the shin. That's one of the most common underlying causes. Also, if your calf is tight, that posterior tibialis muscle sits directly in front of the calf muscle, the gastroc and the soleus. So a lot of times if those muscles get tight, they start pulling on that posterior tibialis, and you end up with shin splint pain. So Andrew, your question is, assuming that it's not calf related and it is coming from the foot, in my experience, the combination of a little bit more of a rigid type of arch providing stability and some strengthening exercises that work on the intrinsic muscles of the foot are the way to go there. So, but definitely don't disregard the calf muscles. Be sure you're rolling out with foam roller, stick roller, or crossball, whatever is your weapon of choice there. So moving forward, Condarp says, which type of shoes are more comfortable for rainy season? So that's one, there's not really a right answer there. A shoe though, and this might take a little bit more research, a shoe that is very porous. I know with like racing shoes or racing spikes, they make some that are specifically for like the steeplechase, because there's a water jump that you go through. Those shoes are very light, they're very porous, so water can very easily get in and get out. So maybe doing a little bit more research on shoes that, trail shoes a lot of times are built a little bit more for the wet mud or puddles or whatnot. So doing a little bit more research there would be good. So next, we have a question from Holly. Hello, Holly. I'm interested in what I can do to get my flutes, I'm assuming you mean glutes, yeah, my glutes and hamstring firing more in my left leg. I noticed doing the deadlift single leg squat, my right leg is weaker than my left leg is weaker than my right. So that's a real common thing. There's a couple different answers to that question. If you are looking to get stronger in your glutes and hamstring from a running standpoint, doing more motor control exercises would be good. And when I say motor control, it's not necessarily big time weight, big time strength. It's more teaching your brain to tell those muscles to fire while you're running. So doing really just basic leg extensions, like if you're in a quadruped on your hands and knees, and just kind of pushing each leg back where you're feeling what it's like to activate both your glute max and your hamstring while you're running is a good way. Doing various types of leg bridges, single leg bridge or a glute bridge, or a double glute bridge. Both of those are good things to be doing from a running standpoint, where it's focusing more on activation of the muscle, motor control, a little bit of muscular endurance, but not so much power. So that's if we're looking at the glute max, which is a very important muscle for generating power while we're running. If you're looking more for glute medius, which is equally as important for hip stability and core stability, things like that, then doing lateral walks side to side with resistance around your knees or ankles are good. And I'm kind of naming more simple exercises off the top of my head. That's one of the reasons why the Run Experience website and our app is so good, is because there are a ton of running specific, functional to runner exercises on there that focus on all the glutes, glute maximus, glute med, glute min. So that would be one of the first places I would tell you to check as well. So hope that works. Hope that helps a little bit. Next we got Ray. Hi, Ray. It says, following up with the, oh wait, I'm jumping ahead here, just a second. It says, hi, my kneecap was a bit loose after bending it funny yesterday. It moved like there was jelly underneath. And this is Jen from Arizona. So that's one, the kneecap being either too tight or too loose is a common thing. I'm wondering if it caused pain. If it caused pain, then that's something I would worry about. If it wasn't causing pain, that might have just been like a weird movement that caused a quick shift of the kneecap. Either way, I would do a lot of mobility work on your quad, because a lot of times when we get kneecap issues as it relates to running, it's not a strength issue. There are times where it is strength, but I would say more times than not that I see in a clinical setting, it's more quads are tight, they start pulling on the kneecap, and that's when you get the kind of strange or weird feeling movement there. So first check to see the two quad muscles in the middle, the one on the inside, the one on the outside. Make sure none of those are too tight, tugging on the kneecap. And with a lot of these questions, I'm going to get as detailed as I can in this group kind of meeting type setting. There's some of these though where I would tell you, hey, we need to get more specific here. We need some one-on-one time. So, again, I offer these appointments where it's a one-on-one injury consultation that's kind of different than the gait analysis that I was telling you about, where we set up a 30-minute call, and it's Skype or FaceTime, and then we go through one-on-one the specifics of your injury, when it hurts, when it doesn't hurt, and that allows me to get a whole lot more specific and give you specific exercises via a program that I use. So Jen from Arizona, if that's one that persists, that would definitely be one that I would tell you to schedule an appointment with me for, because we would need to get a little bit more specific as far as what's going on. So hopefully that helps. And then a follow-up, Holly's question before, she was asking about knee pain after doing a single leg squat. She followed up with mild IT band discomfort, not stopping me from running, just wanted to strengthen before it gets worse. So I'm glad you brought that up, because this is something that I see very commonly with people who are strength training, whether it's CrossFit or just gym work, as well as running. And they're both awesome and they're both very important. But when we talk about running, if you think about it, running is entirely a one leg activity. So you're always either on the right leg on the left leg or completely in the air while you're running. And even further than that, running is basically a series of one leg squats where you're not going all the way down into a full squat, but right when your, say, right foot hits the ground, you have that little bend in the knee. So in a way, it's basically a quarter one leg squat, or even less than that. So say you have a 10-mile run where at the low end you're taking 10,000 steps. At the very low end, you should be taking more steps than this, but you're taking 10,000 steps with each foot. That's a lot of small one leg squats that are going to accumulate and add up. So if you're doing, say, a 10-mile run and then you're not recovering quickly enough, and then you get into a gym and do, a couple sets of 5 or 10 one leg squats or deadlifts or loaded squats or anything like that, I see a lot of knee pain from that. So be sure you're getting your quads recovered adequately through foam rolling, stretching, stick rolling, floss band type stuff, and then maybe getting into the gym. So back to Holly, a lot of times if it's IT band, it's going to be from quads that are tight, glute medius that isn't firing. So again, look for some of these good videos we have posted on the Run Experience. So moving on, we have Hurley says, I have flat, no arch feet. I can't run for more than 5 minutes without the middle of my foot hurting. What are some shoes that would help? I just bought Nike Structure Zoom 20 and they helped a little. So that actually, I'm much more of a fan of fixing things the natural way. So you probably need a little bit, at this point in time, you probably need a little bit more support in the shoe, whether it's adding in like a good over-the-counter custom orthotic that you might get at one of the running stores for $20 to $40. But long term, we want to teach those muscles in the bottom of your foot, and there's a bunch of them, to do what the supportive shoe does, to do what the custom orthotic does. So doing intrinsic foot muscle exercises would be good, and there's we have a bunch of those on the Run Experience website and our app. So that would be something to be doing as you're getting a little bit more stability in that shoe. But the Nike Structure Zoom is good, but you might throw in a little bit more of support via an orthotic just until you get those intrinsic muscles of the foot firing a little bit more. and Hurley threw in there's sharp pain that shoots up to my knee. So that would be something where if you add a little bit more support and that still is happening where there's sharp pain shooting up and down your leg, that would be a time to set up a one-on-one appointment with me so we can get a little bit more specific. Because that way I'd be able to give you a little bit better advice. And then we have Renee's follow-up to her question. So again, Renee put that she was joining us from Houston. So again, I hope you're staying safe, staying dry. We're thinking about you all over the country here, and we're here for you. So Renee says, at first I thought my shoes were tied too tight, but I was able to rule it out, and the pain starts in the second and third mile, and sometimes there's numbness. So if we can rule out shoes, which is probably the most common thing that squishes on the metatarsals, if we're sure it's not shoes and they're loose enough, a lot of times you'll get foot numbness or toe numbness that stems from your calves, because the muscles, and I see this in my office quite a bit, and we talked about this one in weeks past, but the nerves that go down into the toes pass through the calf. So if your calf muscles are getting tight and they start squeezing or constricting those nerves at all, it might feel a little bit tight in the calf, but then you'll also get some numbness tingling in the foot. So before moving on to the next thing, I would say be sure you're digging into a roller or the crossball, myofascial release, whatever, and be sure you're doing that pre-run to make sure you're loosening those areas up. If it's still persisting, then let me know and we can get a little bit more in depth, because it could be an issue with intrinsic muscles of the foot being weak or some other things. So definitely let me know about that. All right, next we have Kyle. I'm Kyle too. Nice to meet you. And he says, hi, Dr. Bowling. I live in Louisville as well. Oh, awesome. So not too far away. I live in Louisville as well. The ball of my foot has started to hurt ever since my long run. Is this most corrected by form, shoes? Should I take a long rest? If it just started, Kyle, I wouldn't tell you necessarily take a long rest yet until we're thinking, you know, there's something that could delay or limit your ability to accomplish your goals with whether race or races you're training for. It could be either of those things, though. It could be form, where if you are not, if you've lost some flexibility in your foot or ankle, it'll cause some overcompensation into those areas. So that could be one thing to look at, and that might be a good reason to do gait analysis. So with that one, I mean, you could come into the office if you wanted to, or, you know, feel free to shoot me an email and send me some videos. It also could be shoes. So if you don't have proper flexibility in those metatarsals or proper flexibility in your ankle, but then you have a shoe that has a very flexible forefoot or a midfoot section, that could be something that's causing some overuse into the foot. So again, that might be one that that we need to get a little bit more in depth with. So let me know if neither of those things help, and we can go from there. All right, so next we have Elizabeth from Massachusetts. Hello, Elizabeth. All right, she says, I'm having some tenderness in my lower leg, both sides on the inside behind my ankle next to my Achilles. So if it's on both sides on the inside of the ankle, this is one that I see in the office quite a bit too. A lot of us think it's Achilles pain, like straightforward Achilles pain, but it's actually one of the tendons that sits right next to the Achilles. That might be that posterior tibialis tendon that I was talking about earlier. And that goes back to the first two things to check. One would be, are you pronating a little bit too much, or is your foot unstable or rolling inward? In which case it can be corrected through different shoes and or strengthening up the muscles of your foot. Or is it from calves that are tight, that are pulling on both the Achilles and that posterior tibialis tendon? So those would be the first two things to try. But that's another one where the approach is wrong sometimes, because you approach it just like it's straightforward Achilles, where you're just rolling or stretching Achilles or the calf, and it's actually the tendon that sits right next to it. Next, we have my wife, Lane Bowling. And she has a message from my son, Theo. It says, Daddy, tell me hi. Hi, buddy. Theo actually went on his first ever run with me the other day. We made it like 200 feet down the road before we had to take a break, but still very proud of him. So hi, Theo. I'll see you soon. Mwah. Next, we have Sierran Smith. I have problems with can't read that one on air. That's really funny though. Moving on. Next we have Sophie. Hi, I have pain in the area between the inner kneecaps and the hamstring tendon. It gets sore on my longer runs, worse for a few days after, then better again. I run with orthotics for arch support. So this is one that sounds, Sophie, could you chime in one more time? Is it more on the front side of the leg, the back side of the leg, or on the inside? Because there's a couple different things that could be going on there, like on the basically front, back, or on the complete inside. And then I'll come back to you. And then Romulo says, customized orthotics only makes it worse. in some cases, I agree. I think, you know, before we completely throw orthotics under the bus, they definitely have some use. I mean, if we're in kind of the acute phase of an injury where we're needing a little bit of extra support or bracing of an area that's unstable, orthotics can help stabilize that area and allow you to continue to train without letting it get worse. You know, if there's some structural deformity with your foot, whether it's an old fracture that didn't heal right or a you know, some sort of congenital anomaly, custom orthotics can be good for that. But I would agree, a fair amount of time, if you're just relying on an orthotic to help get over the hump with an injury, it is wrong. Some of the worst cases of like plantar fasciitis that I've seen in a clinical setting, you know, are from people that have spent years in a big, thick, you know, beast of a shoe that has major arch support, and then on top of that, they have multiple custom orthotics that they spent thousands of dollars on. You know, I think to a degree, it's kind of like, you know, if you injure your back, the worst thing you could do is wear a back brace for long periods of time because it allows your core muscles to atrophy that are there to support your spine, and then you end up in worse pain than you were when the injury initially happened. Loading your foot up with stability can sometimes be the case. So, yeah, Romeo, I think sometimes that's the case, but also, you know, there are times that it's certainly useful. We could talk about that all day. Fast 436, having major hip pain when running. Just got adjusted at the chiropractor and my hip was out of place. Any other advice? So that's good you're getting it looked at. I always tell people, whether they're coming in to see me or seeing another chiropractor, PT or whatever, the adjustment is good, and there could have been a joint that was locked up that we're restoring mobility to, but that's just one piece of the pie. So, you know, the chances are there's something from a mechanical standpoint that caused that hip to get locked up and need to be manipulated or adjusted. And then, you know, we could probably adjust it 50 times straight, and if you're not correcting the underlying mechanics behind what caused it to lock up, it's not going to get a whole lot better. So, you know, getting more in depth with functional analysis, whether it's gait analysis, whether it's doing functional movement screens to tell us exactly why you needed the manipulation or adjustment in the first place, would be the ideal way to go. So if I can help with that, let me know, or that would be something to ask the chiropractor the next time you talk to him or her. So moving on to Trey Nelson. He says, hi, I have pain in one of my heels. Doesn't hurt when I run, but is tender when I walk, or have pain sitting and then get up. So that's very, very common. And that's what can get dangerous about heel pain, is like, you know, if it's more of like a calcaneal bursitis on the direct bottom of the heel, or traditional plantar fasciitis, a lot of times it doesn't hurt majorly while you're running, or it'll hurt like the first mile or so of the run, then warm up and feel fine, and then hurt again after you're done running. Then when you sit down, stand back up, it's back with a vengeance. When you get out of bed in the morning, first couple steps are painful. So I wouldn't necessarily tell you to stop running, but you're kind of in that beginning stage of it getting a little bit worse if you're not approaching it the right way. So I would approach it like typical plantar fasciitis, where you're evaluating, is your calf tight, is your soleus pulling on the back of your heel too much, causing that tissue on the bottom of your foot to overwork itself? Is it an issue with the shoes, whether it's too much stability or not enough stability? So those would be the things that I would be evaluating. Also, you know, a lot of times these areas get bad, especially when they've been around for more than a week, because there's not enough blood flow to the area. It's more degenerative in nature. So doing things like lacrosse ball, foam roller, any of the myofascial release tools would be good for helping move that in the right direction. Next, we have Stanley 204. We got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to try to get to everyone here, but again, like, feel free to shoot me an email afterwards, and I can either direct you to schedule an appointment with me, or maybe give you a little bit, give more advice about what you have going on. Stanley 204 says, hi, I figured out that I had shin splints because I pushed the legs to move forward. Since I just pulled my legs, it got better, but pain moved to the knee. Do you recommend pose method of running? Yeah, pose is great, but anytime you're trying to do a new type of run, whether it's pose, whether it's chi running, whether it's going from a midfoot strike to a heel strike or a heel strike to a midfoot strike, chances are you're going to get a little bit beat up making that transition because you are taking areas that are used to taking stress when you're running. So say we're a heel striker or moving to be a midfoot striker. Initially, when you start getting more midfoot, you're taking all that stress that you were putting into your ankle, your knee, your hip, your low back, and then immediately putting that into more of the soft elastic areas like your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, your calves, which is good, but if those areas aren't used to it, you're probably going to get dinged up a little bit. So you want to be real careful with that transition. So to answer your question, if there's a needed change because you're wanting to get more efficient, you're wanting to prevent various injuries that you're getting, then yeah, absolutely start moving into something like pose method, but just be very, very careful, specifically with your feet and your calves, to make sure you're not doing too much too soon. Hopefully that makes sense. That's another one where we could talk about that all day, and that might need a little bit more one-on-one time. So if that's the case, let me know. But for the most part, it's a good change to make. Just be super careful. Don't do it too quick, and be very careful. All right, next we have Clifford Brown. I ran a 5K trail run and my foot came down on a rock a little funny. My ankle was a little bit swollen that night, but is not swollen now. There's still a little pain. Is it safe to resume training? I think so. I mean, unless we're worried about tearing of some of the ligaments in the ankle, or if there's major swelling or major discoloration, that's one that I would tell you to at least try to run through. The one thing I would tell you, and I'm a huge fan of trail running. I think it's a great way to work muscles a little bit differently than you normally would. That would be a time, though, that I would say, all right, while this thing is healing, maybe get on the roads a little bit more, just because each step when you're on the road is more consistent, so you're not going to worry about hitting another rock, hitting a root, or that unevenness of trail running and rolling that ankle again and delaying the progress. So maybe spend a week or two on the road just to make sure you're still getting in the fitness, getting in the training, but avoiding the risk of flaring it back up. So hope that makes sense. Next we have Maria Keenan. She said, hi, I have some ilium pain after running. What is the best hip strengthening exercise to do? So this is also very common, when you have pain up on the ilium, which is kind of the upper side part of the hip there. That usually, from a gait analysis standpoint, I'm speaking generally here, usually when I do gait analysis with someone that has ilium pain, there's some sort of instability in the hip or core. So this would be another time where checking in with the Run Experience app or the website with all the great videos that we released would be a good thing to check in on. As far as like muscle groups, lateral core, so planks, things like that, really anything that's going to work the glute medius, and so anything in that lateral plane would be good for that. But again, that would be one to check in with the website, because we have a ton of good stuff to do that is very specific towards runners. Jazzman says, can compression socks make your legs feel heavy when running? I wear compression socks and feel my legs heavy. Sometimes, yeah. With compression, if you look at the research with compression, it suggests wearing it post-run, because there's some value in it with helping the muscles recover and helping that kind of natural pumping mechanism of getting that lactic acid or blood flow that's kind of there from the run out to allow your body to send new blood, new oxygen back to the area. I've personally had some success wearing compression socks or sleeves while running, like when I'm coming back from a calf strain, just because it keeps those muscles warm, keeps them from over contracting sometimes and becoming re-injured. So I would tell you, if you're experiencing any of that legs being heavy, try running without it a couple times, see if that gets better, because I guess theoretically it could mess with some of the circulation if you're wearing it during the run. Maybe if they're too tight and you're not getting enough blood into the feet or legs. So maybe just something to experiment with to see how it feels. And then a follow-up from Jazzman. Also, should I do a recovery run after a long, easy run, or can I do a tempo run? I don't want an overuse injury. I personally would not do a tempo run right after a long, easy run, even though it might not be that taxing cardiovascularly. That's still, after a long run, long time on your feet. So you're still working muscles, you're still working tendons, you're still putting out some serious energy there. So I would do a recovery run, multiple recovery runs, even after that slow long run before doing tempo, just to make sure you're letting yourself recover enough. Next we have Boris. He says, "Hi Doc, my name is Boris from Trinidad. Welcome, Boris. I have pain in my middle toe. It is red and swollen, and I have a half marathon on Thursday. Can I still do it?" I mean, if you can get that, just because it's red and swollen, I'm going to make sure you're not dealing with any type of infection or anything like that. If you can get that checked out by maybe your primary care physician in your area to make sure there's nothing going on systemically. If there's not, then you want to rest that sucker until Thursday and hopefully give it some time to recover, you know, icing it down at the end of the day and that kind of thing. But yeah, definitely try to get that one checked out before putting it through 13.1 on Thursday. All right, so circling back with Sophie, is mainly, and Sophie had a question about knee pain. It's mainly very close to the inner kneecap, but it gets sore around the tendons as well. It seems connected because the discomfort comes and goes in both places at the same time. Okay, so this is what I thought you were alluding to. And I think you said you got into more of a stability type of shoe. Long term, that should help, because a lot of times if on both sides you're having knee pain, it's from some sort of internal rotation that's happening when you take a step, where you strike down and then that knee internally rotates. You do that a couple thousand times during a run, and the inside of the knee, kind of where the inside of the kneecap is, can start acting up. So I would be doing some mobility with the quads, making sure you're rolling through the quads to loosen them up, and then, you know, sticking with the shoe that has a little bit more support in it, as well as doing a lot of glute stability type work to make sure your hips and core are where they need to be. Because sometimes if core muscles aren't firing right, glutes aren't firing right, that's what's going to be what allows that knee to collapse inward. So again, going on to our website, therunexperience.com, and looking at all the great stuff we have for running specific exercises for hip and core stability. So let me know if I can help any more with that, because that might be one to do gait analysis with, to see exactly what is going on. All right, so next we have Sarah. Says, "Hi from Cincinnati." That's not too far away from me. So no actual pain, but I've noticed in the last month my knees are making crackling sounds like Rice Krispies. Is this concerning? That's something that is very common, and I see that a lot. And I'm glad it's not causing pain. If it's just starting, though, that's probably a start to chondromalacia, where, you know, that kneecap normally has to be able to glide back and forth while you're running on top of where it joins the femur and tibia. So if that kneecap stops gliding back and forth, gets smashed up against those leg bones and start grinding back and forth, you'll get the crackling as the cartilage starts to wear down a little bit, and that eventually causes pain. That's another one where the first things I look at are your hamstrings tight, are your quads tight. If either of those are anything short of where they need to be with range of motion, that's the first thing I would try. Some other things to take into consideration: if you're a heel striker, might be time to start midfoot striking while you run, because that'll take some stress off those knees. That's also at times a good time to try kinesio tape. That can help those kneecaps glide a little bit better. But those would be the first things I would check on. All right, so got 2 more questions and then we'll call it a day. Elizabeth says, I'm running in neutral shoes right now, and calves are tight, but I've been adding my Vibram 5 fingers for about 10% of my runs, and I switched back to my regular shoes, the Topos Flylight. So that's one where the 5 fingers, that's good for midfoot striking, and so are the Flylights. But I think with running, especially if you're running more on the roads or at all on the roads, I'm not sure that's gonna be enough support on you. If you like the feeling of those shoes where your toes can spread out adequately, your foot sits flat, so there's a 0 drop. I'm a big fan of Ultras. I don't know if you're familiar with that brand. I know we've done quite a bit of work with them on our website, but it's Ultra, ALTRA. I love those shoes because they give some cushioning. You know, I think there's 3 different levels of cushioning. There's the thin, there's the medium, and then there's the maximalist. Those I think have all the qualities of 5 finger, where your toes are spread out, your foot sits flat. It's much easier to strike midfoot. So I might try that, putting that into your arsenal too, as far as shoes. But the Vibrams or the Flylights are very common to create foot pain, heel pain, Achilles pain, that kind of thing. And then we have one from Just Crow. It says, update on my upper foot pain. Your advice of doing muscle building exercises for my feet has worked wonders. I wish I would have spoken to you before visiting those 2 podiatrists. So thanks for chiming in there, and thanks for the update. I'm very, very glad to hear some of that stuff has worked as far as the strengthening exercises. I'm glad I could lend you a hand there, and I appreciate the shout out. So let me know if I can help with anything in the future. All right, guys, so that wraps up all the questions. I think we got to all of them. If I didn't, like I said, email me at kyle@therunexperience.com. Also, down in the description of this video, there are the 2 links to set up appointments with me. Injury consults, where we get on a call for 30 minutes. Tell me about the injury. We go through the specifics. You know, we call it running specific healthcare, because that's what we're doing. Too many of, in my opinion, the widespread healthcare profession, it doesn't get specific enough for runners. A lot of times they'll just tell you to stop running, and more times than not, it's not something you really need to stop running for. So we're trying to break the mold with healthcare and offer something that's specific for runners, where we get to the bottom of what's going on. So we have the injury consult appointments. We also have the gait analysis, which I'm a huge fan of, because it allows us to really get down and dirty with what the underlying mechanics are from your running injury. So feel free to take advantage of either of those appointments, and we will chime in next week. So hope I helped out a little bit, and it was great talking to you guys, and we will touch base soon. Have a good rest of the week. Happy running.